You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for the 5th episode of Skeleton Crew. You have a lot to learn about pirates. I am your host, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, pleasure yacht connoisseur, Joe Hogan.
Yeah. Cool.
We're back. We're back.
We are.
We're back.
We are back.
We're back because like a little bit longer than intended break, but the holidays were a little bit nuts. So we're a few days later than originally planned, but we're back. But also we're back in the sense that like last week's episode, not the greatest so far in the series. Actually, I would say like based on sort of the uptick with this one, I'm gonna say probably gonna be the low point of the season, with the kids and the child soldiers and all that stuff. It was fine, but not great. But then with this episode, like, oh dude, we're fully back. We're fully back. This is a fantastic episode of Skeleton Crew. This is one of my favorites so far. So many things to talk about in this one that I am worried we are definitely going to miss some of it. But that just means, you know, it means that it's a great episode, because it means, you know, we could talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and still not cover everything that's interesting in this one. What did you think of this one, Joe?
Yeah, same. It was I mean, I don't really know how to describe it quickly, but I really enjoyed it. It was everything I wanted it to be. I had the same sense of adventure that I had in the first few episodes.
Yeah.
Like you said, like we're back. Exactly.
It felt nice to get back into it, and a little bit more like on the trail of the treasure sort of thing, because last week's felt like a little bit of like a distraction, but this one, is definitely moving things along, and the end of the episode is there's a lot there to talk about, but there's also a lot to talk about at the beginning. So we kick off with 33 tied down, and they start questioning him, and he's like, it's okay, I'm not gonna hurt you guys now. Which is just kind of like, I don't know, it's a little bit convenient, but also fine. It's fine. He's like, nope, it just, you know, when we were in that room, you guys like sort of, but they kind of did the override or whatever. There's a line there where KB says that she did something to the memory circuits or whatever. So I get it. Like it something happened in between, and we don't need the details. It's just they fixed them. So but the greatest thing is he tells them about Captain Renaud, and then Tac Renaud, and Jack, whatever you want to call him, Dash, if you like, I goes off on a whole thing, and the kids are thoroughly unimpressed. And it's like, okay, well, let's go, and let's go to Skull Mountain. Is that what it is? Skull Ridge, I think, is what it is. But it's such a great beat. It's such a great comedic beat. 33 just gets up. He just gets up, and it's like, oh yeah, he could have continued rampaging if he felt like it. Like he's really quite terrifying as a droid. But we get all that, and it's great, you know, exposition and whatnot, and sort of setting things up of like Tac was a, you know, fearsome pirate, the most renowned pirate in the galaxy, and blah blah blah, and the story of his first mate betraying him and all that stuff. But it's to me, it's like it's just all exposition. Like this is all just flavor text sort of thing. It's not really the plot. But then we get a fantastic moment where Wim leaves the room and Jod follows him, and he sees him crying. And he's like, oh. He's like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. But then kind of gets pulled into it, and he sits down next to him. And this to me is one of the most important things in the episode. I and that is the advice that Jod gives Wim. Oh, we skipped over the fact that like we started off with the adults at the beginning of this episode, but
that was maybe the most forgettable
yeah,
part of the episode.
but it
sure.
but you can go back to the previous episode. I called it. Like I was like, oh, and the next episode will definitely start with the adults.
You did.
And it'll be like, what are they up to? Just so that like just pacing wise, we need to like check in with them and see that they're still trying to get their kids back and whatever. And that's all it was. It was just and more of the like. Very obviously, the supervisor is not real. The supervisor does not exist. This is a Wizard of Oz situation. Yeah, don't look behind the curtain, right? Like, and they're going to, and we're going to find out that it's just a computer. It's just a big computer running this mint. But this moment between Jod and Wim, and I am saying Jod fairly specifically because I think that Jod might actually be his name. Like Jod Nanawood is actually who he was, and then Jack Silvo is his Long John Silver
first alias,
first alias, and Dash Zentar is Zenton, sorry, Dash Zenton, which is so close. It's so close,
I know.
And it's like they're messing with us.
They're
I believe they're tooling with you, sir.
Probably.
Yeah.
Me specifically.
Yeah. But I say I'm using Jod specifically in this context because the advice that he gives Wim is not pirate advice. It is Jedi advice, and it's very pointedly Jedi advice. And I said this before we even got into the season. John Watts and I are on like a very similar wavelength. I really love everything that he's done with Spider-Man, and that was what got me so excited about this project and what he was going to bring to Star Wars. Jod quotes my favorite Star Wars quote, right? Your focus determines your reality.
Yeah.
Like that is, it is a thing that I say to myself on a very regular basis, if not like a daily basis. It's a quote from Qui-Gon. And it comes at the end of a bunch of advice that he is giving about attachments. And it's a very interesting thing because it's a twisting of the Jedi ideology, and specifically the ideology that led to the downfall of the Jedi, right? And that of like abandoning all attachment. And I like there's sound logic behind the attachment thing, because of the pull to the dark side and all of that, but the Jod speaking about it in this way specifically, I think it's actually like a really great piece of punctuation at how wrong the Jedi were, right? Because we know that the advice that he's giving to Wim is on the one hand necessary for survival. So like you get it and you're like, yeah, okay, like yeah, you can't be like sitting and crying about missing your dad when there are pirates trying to kill us, right? Like that's you need to compartmentalize to a certain degree. But then the idea of like just forget it all, like because he sits down and you almost expect them to be like, listen, we're gonna go here, we're gonna get the thing, and we're gonna get you home, and it's all gonna be fine, everything's gonna be fine, you're gonna see your dad soon, like don't worry, which is what he says at first, right? He's like, oh, you'll see them soon, and he's like, oh, not my mom because she's dead. So he's like, oh, good. And he sits down and it's just like, that's when he's like, you just have to like let go of all this stuff. You have to get rid of these attachments. Just forget about it. Which is obviously what he has done. Um, but like I said, like it's like this, it's like a perversion of this Jedi ideology, right? Which comes out of the code, and you know, uh, specifically sort of like there is no emotion, there is peace, right? Like that to me is the piece of the code that then goes to like, oh, okay, so then like we just need to abstain, right? Abstain from emotional attachments, and then we don't have to worry about the dark side. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. It's not how that works. Like if you are not prepared, then when you do feel emotional attachments, you're gonna feel them 10 times harder and not know how to deal with them. And yeah, repression is not a great way to deal with anything. So yeah, I really like that. I really like that we're getting more and more. To me, they're not even hints at this point. They're just continuing confirmations. I mean, this whole
Yeah.
episode is just a confirmation of what I suspected, which means one of two things: I was right, or this is all red herring, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just red herring after red herring.
I don't
Which
know what's worse,
yeah, right.
you being right or the red herring. Because
Yeah,
at this
yeah,
point, I want you to be right.
yeah. Yeah, because the lightsaber at the end of the episode is also another like, yeah, he's a Jedi,
Mm.
or was a Jedi. And Wim even kind of pushes him on it and is like, if you're not a Jedi, how did you do that? Right? Because he picks up the data pad or whatever and
Mm.
hands it back to him with the Force. And then later uses the Force to steal back his dagger, which is not just a silly moment, but is important for the end of the episode. Yeah, so it's like and he doesn't say anything. He kind of just gives him a look
Yeah. A
and
little
then gets
like
up, and
knowing.
it's like he is a Jedi. Like he is a Jedi, but he's not a Jedi anymore. He was a Padawan, he's not a knight. Whatever semantics he's going to use to to argue it away, right? But all of that is kind of for me to say that this betrayal, this double cross at the end of the episode, I think is a will be a I don't know if it'll be short lived. I don't know if it'll come back around until like maybe the end of the episode, but it is not this is not an end state for Jod. I think that's I think his I don't know. I guess like his better angels will come around eventually, and he'll he'll end up helping the kids in the end.
Mm.
But yeah, yeah, his it's it reminds me of in Obi-Wan when the Grand Inquisitor is talking about the Jedi, and it's like we don't have to hunt the Jedi hunt themselves, right? Like their compassion and their morality, it's like an itch they have to scratch, right? Like um and I think we have seen that with Jod a couple of times, where it's and this moment with Wim is a good example of that. But it's almost like it's in the beginning of this episode to juxtapose what he does at the end, right? Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot more here. I shudder to think that we've got another Order 66 flashback in our future.
I'm okay with it. I like them. I don't
Yeah,
care. I like
I
them.
love them too. It's just funny how much that is like it's become a trope within Star Wars, but specifically within the Disney Plus era of
Yeah.
Star Wars, which is
Yeah.
like sooner or later we're gonna get a flashback to Order 66.
I'm cool with
Or
it.
in the instance of Bad Batch, it's just where we're gonna start.
Yeah.
It's not a flashback. It's just in the timeline where we are. So yeah, I think though we will not get um an actual flashback. Like, I don't think that we will actually see Order 66. My guess, and we'll see how right I am on this one. You guys can mark it down. My
Crystal, are
guess,
you listening?
yeah, my guess is that we will get Jod telling them about Order 66, and as he does, we will hear the audio
All
of
right.
it. It'll be like he'll be like traumatically reliving the memory sort of thing, and we'll hear the we'll hear Tem and it's like a freeze, right? Like that sort of thing. Because they have hours of audio of Tamora Morrison yelling things as clone troopers. So there'll be a little bit of that, and then the sound of blaster bolts and lightsabers, and maybe even Anakin's lightsaber specifically, and that sort of thing, and then yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think that Jod was in the temple, so I would imagine that he was out in the galaxy, because that tends to be the thread between all of these Padawans that survived, is that the ones that survived were out on missions, right? And that's why they managed to escape. And because
Reva.
because of Obi-Wan, right? Because Obi-Wan sends the message and is like, it would be really cool to get the holocron if like Jod has a holocron or something.
That would be awesome.
I was like, because the thing, like, we've gotten the holocron in Rebels, and we've heard the audio from the holocron like many times in things, but we've never gotten the live action version of the holocron.
Yeah,
And
that would be rad.
it would be really cool if, like, while they were doing Obi-Wan or something, that Ewan at least like recorded the dialogue sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that they have it. If I were making Star Wars and I had him in an ADR booth at some point, I would have been like, hey, we're just gonna get you to record this speech real quick. We're gonna play the one from Rebels. You can listen to it, and then we just want you to record your version of it. And we don't know when, but we will use it. We just want it. It's gonna go in the archive, and we'll use it at some point. If Matthew Wood has not done that, I would be very surprised, because I feel like he thinks that sort of way as well. Of like, well, we've got Ewan McGregor, and we've got you here, so let's just do this. Yeah, because it would be great to get the Ewan version of that speech, or at least part of it. But we'll see. I think it's going to be more like him sort of like recounting the trauma, and us hearing it and not needing to see it, because we've seen it so many times. We'll know, right? And he'll be like, oh yeah, I was on this planet with my master so and so, and it'll be like oh, I didn't even know that character had a Padawan, right? Like, it's gonna be I think it'll be like a slight revelation, because it'll be somebody that we know, maybe not a council member, but it'll be a Jedi.
I was gonna say Obo
that's
Rances.
got a name. Yeah. Who oh boy, Obo Rances says that would be fantastic. Because we don't have a canon explanation for why he's not on the council in Attack of the Clones, but it doesn't mean that he's dead necessarily. So yeah, so that's my guesses with all of that stuff. What do you think about all the Jod Jedi connection?
Yeah,
stuff?
I'm super into it. I'm pretty convinced too that as soon as I heard your focus determines your reality, I was like, damn, all right.
Yeah,
it has to be. I feel like it would be such a dick move to make this a red herring at this point.
Yeah. It's so pointed, right? Like, it's such a specific quote to call out, especially like an older character, like a mentor character to a young character, right? Like, it's such a.
Here's a crazy one. A crazy one. What if no, that doesn't make sense. Never mind. Because he would have to be older than Obi-Wan. I was gonna say, what if he was Qui-Gon's Padawan before Obi-Wan? But obviously, Jod is much younger than Ewan McGregor, so that doesn't make sense.
So, okay, but there is something that would make sense, that could make sense. I don't know how much of this is canon. I don't know how much of it. I don't know that we have closure on this because I haven't finished all of these books. Dooku had an apprentice before Qui-Gon. The cowboy one. He's got the cowboy accent in all of the
remember
books.
That. Yeah.
I can't remember his name right now. It's on the tip of my tongue.
From Master and Apprentice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in another one as well. Like he's appeared multiple times. And I don't think that we know what happened to him during the Clone Wars. I don't think that we have closure on that. I'd have to look it up. But because he was kind of not a Jedi anymore, wasn't he? Didn't he left at when Dooku did? I'm pretty sure.
No, he was, because he was helping Qui-Gon during Master and Apprentice. But he was assigned by the Jedi to help the government that he was like sent to.
He was like a bodyguard for a princess or something, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. God, it's like right on the tip of my tongue, and it's something with an R. Oh my God. I'm just gonna go Master and Apprentice characters and see if we can figure this out. But he'd actually kind of be a perfect character to have been Jod's master, because he's like outside of the order in a certain way, right? Like the connection to Dooku, the connection to Qui-Gon, and the fact that he was kind of like not really involved in the Clone Wars.
Rael Averross.
There we go, Rael Averross. Yeah,
or Rael, whatever. R-A.
No, it's Rael. Yeah, it's Rael.
Rael.
So Rael Averross. Let's see. Do we have a? Following a skirmish at Vancouver, Count Dooku was captured by the Onaka gang and had to work with Obi-Wan. What? During the breakout, Dooku reflected on when he trained Rael Averross and Qui-Gon and thought that the Jedi Order had declined since his departure. That's not anything. Yeah. There is no closure on this character.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. We don't even know where he was during the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
He worked for at the Zerka Corporation, because I remember in that story it was very like Obi-Wan had a lot of issues, right? Like he was like, this guy is not operating within like the sort of like the boundaries of the Jedi Order. It seems like he's just become like a sheriff for this corporation in the Outer Rim, and Qui-Gon's like, listen, it's not that big of a deal. He's a good dude. like you need to settle down, Obi-Wan. And then Obi-Wan's like, no, I will not settle down. And then he's in Dooku Jedi Lost as well. Gray imagined Averross as being portrayed by actor Benjamin Bratt. Well, listen, let's get it. Let's make it happen. Rael Averross, Benjamin Bratt, little Jod Nonawood. I'm down for it. If we don't get an answer, then the F level canon, which is not something that I've invoked for a long time, but F level canon was coined during Frontlines, because we had there was like video game canon and comic book canon and cartoon show canon and all of that, but then there was G level canon, which was like anything from George is G level canon, and it trumps everything else, right? Man, it's so awful that one man ruined that word. You can't even say that something trumps something else, and then it's just so many bad feelings. But G level canon is the, like, if George said it, then and I often malign G level canon in one specific instance, which is and I was in the room for it, and it frustrated me at the time. I when he declared at Star Wars Celebration, being interviewed by Jon Stewart, that Obi-Wan Kenobi came from the planet Stewjon. I was like, oh my God, like I get like it's a thing that it riles me up so much because I get mad at myself for it. Because it's one of those things where I'm always like, people need to like not take Star Wars so seriously, and it's not that big of a deal, and your expectations are what's like your attachment to these characters and all of that stuff. Like you've tied up your identity in them. And George Lucas was a silly guy. Like, and Star Wars is silly, and it's full of stupid stuff. And I'm constantly reminding everybody that that's what Star Wars is. That Star Wars is dumb. Star Wars is so dumb. But then I get so mad whenever I think that he just like on a whim in the middle. I don't know how much of a whim it was, but because I'm sure that a lot of the questions were given to him beforehand. But like in the midst of like in a very like flippant, jokey way, he's like, I don't know, Obi-Wan. We'll say Obi-Wan's from Stu John. Now you're part of Star Wars. And it's like that's neat for Jon Stewart, and I'm happy for him, but Stu John is a terrible name for a planet, and it also like up until that point the I think I've said this before on the podcast, like up until that point the I think that the established, it wasn't canon, but it was sort of like one of those things of like Obi-Wan was originally from Corellia, the same as Han, and so there was like a connection there between those characters, and but it had never sort of been confirmed and all of that sort of thing. So it was like it dashes that, right? Like it just absolutely destroys it. But yeah, so that's G level canon, and I have often maligned that specific piece of G level canon. But out of G level canon came F level canon, which is, as far as I'm concerned, one tier below G level canon, and that is when I say that a thing is a thing. When it's not established in any of the lore, there is no canon to contradict me, and I come up with a theory, and until that theory is disproven, it is considered F level canon. So I don't remember what any of the F level canon things that I declared were, but I don't know. There was several things. Somebody who's been listening to the podcast for a really, really long time and listened through all the front lines could maybe tell us, but not me. But we're gonna put this in F level canon until it is otherwise I determined. Jod Nanawood was Padawan to Rael Averross, and Rael Averross is Benjamin Bratt, and he's got a Texas accent for no reason. He's in space. Hung out with Count Dooku for a real long time. Texas accent.
Yeah.
Don't ask questions. Just
it's fine.
Enjoy it. Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad that we established this. We've done the important work here on this episode. There's nothing else to talk about, right? That's it. That's it for this one. No. We get to the planet that Renaud's lair is on, because that's where the coordinates for At-Aden are, and everybody knows that Tak Renaud was obsessed with finding At-Aden until one day he just kind of disappeared, and that the ship that they're on is the Onyx Cinder. We finally get the name of the ship in the show. We've known that it's called the Onyx Cinder since the Lego set
that's right.
leaked. But so we get the name of the Onyx Cinder in the episode, in all of that exposition. But they get there, and it is not a scary pirate lair. It is in fact a spa, a very fancy looking spa on Lanupa, the planet Lanupa. And we get yet another gag about the cinder just being an absolute piece of junk as it lands, and then like a piece of it falls off onto a ship and a bunch of goo comes out of it, and it's fantastic. It's great. Star Wars is silly. And I love it. I love that moment so much. And then yeah, it's somewhere underneath, right? I don't know. This is all like just plot stuff. But there's a bounty hunter there, and she recognizes Dash Zenton, otherwise known as Jack Silvo, otherwise known as Jod Nanawood. And it ups the stakes significantly, because we're like, oh, she's definitely going to call in the bounty. And she does. And so we get to see Brutus for 2 seconds in a hologram, but he
I'll
is
take it.
technically he's in the episode, so that's okay. I
Any Brutus is welcome, Brutus.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at Brutus right now because it's one of the things that I got for Christmas from Kara was the Brutus action figure. So
that's awesome. 10 out of 10,
yeah.
Kara. Good work.
Yeah, she nailed it. I mean, she had help, but but yeah.
Don't take this away from her.
No, she did it. Congratulations. So yeah, now we know. Now we're like on a ticking clock, right? We got to find the lair before the pirates show up. And one of my favorite scenes is they get into the room after they've bribed the front desk clerk with all of their dataries, I think they call them. They get into the room and the kids are like, oh my god, it's like Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, right? Like it's like,
yeah,
oh,
I had the same thought. That's so
jumping
funny.
on the bed and all that stuff. This is the thing, like this is the what I had said about what John Watts would bring to it, and it was like it's the like Home Alone, Ferris Bueller, like all of that, like 80s 90s kids movie, the vibe, like he was gonna nail it. I knew that he was gonna nail it, and he did. And that's why, so it's like, that's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that the two of us both thought of that, because that is absolutely the sort of like John Hughes vibe that he's weaving throughout it with the kids, right? Another great moment is when he's dealing with the front desk clerk, and she's like, what about the wise elders? And the camera turns around, and they're just goofing off because they've been left to their own devices for more than 2 minutes, and so they're just like playing with their robes and stuff. And it's so like this is very true to life. There's nothing like, I think one of the places where movies and TV shows get lost in child characters is when you've either got a child character that is not acting like a child, and so you're like, I don't believe this, right? And like a Sixth Sense is that sort of thing, right? Where you've got like Haley Joel Osment, and he's like giving a great performance, but it's like, this is no kid acts this way, right? But within the context of that film, it's fine because he's seeing ghosts and stuff, and he's very traumatized by it, so he wouldn't act like a normal kid, so it's okay, right? But it is very like, it's like that's one type of like kid in a movie. And but then I think what we get more often than not is what an adult thinks a kid is like when they're writing it, and that's where you get Anakin yelling yippee as he runs away, right? And it's like, that's George not remembering what children are. He's like, they're just small versions of adults, right? That yell yippee when they run away, right? Like that's what a child is. And so you get moments like that. But John Watts is very good. He did a great job with teenagers in the Spider-Man movies. And he's obviously also got the same skill with younger kids, because like I think especially the age that these characters are at, because they're at that sort of like 9, 10, 11 age, which is transitionary, right? We call it a tween now, kind of, but they're on the younger side of that. They're not, and like tweens, again, like we're so used to seeing tween characters in like The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and iCarly, and even like Boy Meets World, to go back to like the 90s, right? Where it's like these kids they're really not acting like kids. They're acting like sitcom characters, right? And they've all got their jokes and quips and one-liners and whatever. These kids act like kids, like they like, even when Fern is being like, oh, I'm the captain and that sort of thing, there is very much like, and it comes through in the performance, it's so great. She's like very she's very forceful with Jod, of like, I'm the one who's in charge, but it's all bravado, right? And that all, like, there's so much of them goofing off in this episode that then comes back around, because in the final scene in the vault at the end, when she's like, like, remember, you work for us. We had a deal, Jack. We had a deal. And he betrays them, and she eventually like relents and is like, I submit, or I can't remember what
Yield.
word she
A
used,
yield.
but I yield. Yeah. Um, and it is this moment of her having to finally like drop the not facade necessarily, but like like that bravado. Like
Yeah.
it's like no, like, you are out of your depth. He could have done this at any point in time, like, and also he will kill you. Like, he will do it. He doesn't want to. It's that final scene in the episode is so good because the back and forth between all of them is so tense. With all of the is he really betraying them? This challenge for the ship and all of that. Um, and the way that the kids react is so natural, but like, I don't think that you can get there if you don't have them jumping on the bed and him going like, this is what we're gonna do, and then the whole I I you didn't hear a word that I said, and it's like, yeah, we did, we were listening. It's, oh really, what was the last thing I said? So you didn't hear a word that I said. And it's like, it's such a good
That's a
joke
kid.
because
That's a kid
it's,
comeback. Yeah.
oh my god. And but like that, the things that he says to them, the way that he reacts, and the way that he's like, guys, and then just like loses it and yells at them. It's like, it's so relatable. It's so
Oh yeah.
relatable.
100%.
Um
I'm not even a parent, and I can relate to
yeah,
that.
yeah. And it just like it's that authenticity that, like, even if one of the kids gives a line delivery that's a little bit stilted or a little bit artificial sounding, like, we're gonna forgive that stuff. And then, like, that's the key, right? Is that if you can get those genuine moments in at other points, that when the kids don't give a great performance because they're kids and they're like, they just don't have the experience, they're not going to give an Academy Award performance, right? um when they give like a fine performance or an okay performance, but one that really like would otherwise take you out of it, you forgive it, you just let it go, because the world treats them with such sort of sincerity and earnestness that it's like, whatever, like, you're in for it. The suspension of disbelief of having child characters in your show is maintained by that stuff. And I think, like, again, this is just where John Watts as the showrunner on this, I think, is one of the only people right now in Hollywood that could have pulled this off.
Mm.
That could have made this show, because here's the thing, everybody fucking loves this show. Like, it's actually kind of wild to me. We talked about this last week, where I was like, I I don't understand. Like, where's the negativity,
Yeah.
right? And for part of it, I was like, well, maybe there's just nobody watching. And I haven't checked numbers. I don't know what the ratings are like or anything like that. But over the last week, as I was like, out in the world talking to real human beings, and people are like,
Ugh.
because everybody knows that I'm a Star Wars person, so people brought it up, and everybody is like, it's great. Like, I'm loving Skeleton Crew. It's so good. It's so good. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Everybody likes the show. Everybody likes the Star Wars that I like this time. Like, it's just, I'm so used to people
We're
being like,
allowed to be happy this time,
yeah, I'm so
everyone.
used to
No
people
one's
being
supposed to
like,
be
hey, yeah,
outraged.
Clone Wars is good for a cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, Clone Wars is phenomenal for anything, right? And it's like the way that, like, nobody watched Bad Batch. Nobody watched Bad Batch, right? Like within our circle, within our online echo chamber, absolutely everybody was watching Bad Batch, because we all watch everything. But um yeah, it's just like the way that this show has been able to avoid, even with an episode like last week's episode, which I think under other circumstances would have gotten just like roasted, right, for being a dip in the story, right, for being that lull.
Mm.
um Yeah, and I think it just kind of goes to show everything that I'm saying about John Watts, that he's just a very, very, very skillful storyteller. But B, we need to get away from characters that are connected to the larger Star Wars Skywalker saga.
Mm.
It like that's what I think that's what is so successful about this one. I think that's what was so successful about the first season of Mandalorian, right? Is that because like once you get into season 2 and now all of a sudden we're connected back in, right? And like once we see Luke, now all of a sudden Mando is part of the Luke Skywalker story, and so now we're just waiting, right? And then Ahsoka is there, and so that's part of the Skywalker saga, and now we're gonna see the Rebels characters, and so like it just the more of that connective stuff they introduce, the more the expectations shift, and I think it starts to get bogged down. Where we're at right now with Skeleton Crew is that it is free of those tethers, so it can just do whatever it wants to do. I had a moment talking with Crystal about it a couple of weeks ago where I was like, well, like all this stuff is going to end up being connected, because we were talking about, you and I had talked about it on the podcast. Oh, I guess when Kyle was on as well. So we're talking about it on the podcast, and we're talking about like all of the Thrawn stuff and how it could possibly connect into that. And she was like, "Does it need to?" And I was like, "Well, it's in the same time period as Mando, so as far as we know, it will end up connecting into the Mando movie possibly, or like the Heir to the Empire, what we are currently thinking is going to be Heir to the Empire and all of that, right?" Um so yeah, like inevitably it is going to connect back into all of that, and she kind of just had this like dejected attitude about it of like, "Oh, can it just be its own thing?" And I was like, no, it can't. It can't. It can only survive for so long. But I think that one of the reasons why people are receiving it as well as they are is how disconnected it is
Mm.
from everything. Um, and as we talk about Jod being a Jedi, like inevitably it will come back around, right? It is going to be connected into the whole Skywalker saga by virtue of the fact that it's connected to the Jedi Order.
Mm.
But um yeah, what other like larger connections are going to be? I don't know, but I yeah, I think right now it's clear to me that lack of connection is one of the keys to its success. You don't need to know anything else about. You don't need to have watched Mando. You don't need to have even watched. You know, I don't think you need to have watched any Star Wars. Actually, honestly, I think that you could come in and this could be your first Star Wars and you could not know anything about Star Wars at all. And I think that you could still be invested in these characters and what's happening. Cause it's just like, it really doesn't require you. There are definitely jokes and stuff that you wouldn't get, right? Like um, they say Alderaan and it's like, oh, you guys, you guys missed the war, huh? Right. Like that sort of thing. But casual fans don't even catch that stuff anyways, honestly. Like you'd say it to them and then they go, oh yeah, is Alderaan's the one that got blown up in the first one? Like, yes, that's the name of the planet that Leia is from. And right, like most people watching Star Wars don't have that recall that we do, because they're normal and use their brains for things like their jobs and
Their
responsibilities.
families and
Yeah, and their families and stuff. I unlike us. But yeah, I think that might be key to the success of this one. So it makes me curious about what kind of an effect that'll have. I really don't. I have not looked into like the um, ratings or anything like that of how this show is being viewed at the moment. I don't want to, because I don't want to get bogged down in that stuff. But it's just I'm only curious by virtue of like, what's Disney gonna do?
mm.
Because I feel like they held on to this one for a while, not knowing where to put it or sort of like how it was going to be received.
Yeah.
And as I've talked about many, many, many times this year, the whole Imperial March, everything is Vader and stormtroopers, black and white on a field of red. Go ahead and infer from that what I'm talking about. Skeleton Crew is so counter to that, and so I'm worried about it, right? Like, I'm worried, what is the like as much as we're enjoying it, as much as the audience is enjoying it, is it a part of Disney and Lucasfilm's roadmap at the moment, right? Because what they seem to care most about right now is making sure that the absolute worst people on the internet are still engaged with Star Wars. It seems like that's where a lot of the efforts are going, and this show doesn't care about any of that stuff. It's just a good story. It also, it feels to me like it doesn't even really care that much about the rest of Star Wars, right? Like, in terms of propping things up and needing to retcon other things and fix other things. Yeah, like, I don't think there's going to be any connection into, somehow Palpatine returned on this show. The only thing that I can think is, especially getting the confirmation this episode, that AT-AT is a mint, which is what I think we had all sort of come to the conclusion of after the first 2 episodes, right? And especially after that third one, it was like, okay, yeah, so it's why is it one of these Jewels of the Republic? And it's because, well, this is where they're making the money. The only thing that I can assume, if it's going to be connected into anything sequel trilogy, is that eventually the First Order will get their hands on AT-AT, and that's where the money will come from to fund the war.
I had a feeling a while ago that this was First Order, like early stages.
Yeah. I don't think that the people on AT-AT will have anything to do with it.
No. The resources,
but
is what I meant. Yeah.
Although you know what, it it wouldn't be out of pocket, and that's a pun that's intended because Pocket is a character in this episode. But you wouldn't be crazy for saying, like, because we have no idea where Finn came from. We don't know what planet he came from. We just know that the First Order took him when he was a kid, and we're not quite in range yet, right? We've still got
Finn
a couple
is
of
Wim
years.
confirmed.
Well, yeah, could this be the planet, right? You never know. So there's still so much about the sequel trilogy that is vague and malleable, that it could be connected into anything at this point. But I don't know. I think that would be a lot. It would be a lot for them to jam that all in to this season, because we're so focused on the treasure and the journey and all of that stuff. But I wouldn't put it past them to have it all connected in, but it doesn't seem like that's where anything's going at the moment. If anything, it'll be like a sort of post credits, like
There's no connection right now. Sort of Wim's dad is gonna marry Ahsoka by the end of the show.
Yeah. Finn is Wim's little brother, and Ahsoka is his mom. How does that? But that doesn't make any sense because she's a Togruta. Well, you don't know anything about Togruta and human physiology and what would happen if. Star Wars is dumb, you guys. Relax about it. Yeah. What else in this episode do we need to talk about?
We need to talk about the fact that I'm finally vindicated and my treasure from Celebration Europe is finally on screen.
Yes, yeah.
Finally, guys, I will, in 2 minutes or less, retell this story. At the end of Celebration Europe, for the entire convention, I was one of the very lucky artists to have a table and had an exclusive print. And my very, very, very almost last customer just like we're talking minutes before the show closed, came up to my table, asked to buy a print outside of the convention. Unfortunately, part of the rules, part of the contract is that I am not allowed to sell that print once the convention is over. It's part of the contract. I do not mess with the contract. And he was looking really deflated. So I, like I said, it was the last minute. I had plenty left, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna rescue this one. And I gave him an artist proof, which is one of the prints of my Tales of the Jedi print that I don't have to sell. I'm allowed to give away a select few. And I decided, you know what? This person wanted to buy it. They seem really cool. They really, really want one. Let me give it to them. Turns out this person worked on Skeleton Crew, didn't tell me until after the fact. And he gave me a little piece of, I don't know what, because it's not resin, but it's this like clear material. It's like these like shattered looking little pieces that have these bubbles inside that when you have like backlighting behind them, they look super, super cool. And turns out it was a piece. So I don't know if it's supposed to be implied that this piece itself was treasure, but it was in the treasure room. And I saw it, and he said to me, he's like, at some point in Skeleton Crew, this is not a spoiler, they find a piece of treasure. They find a room, they find a bunch of treasure. And this is one of the pieces that's in the room. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And everybody that I told this story, not everybody, but Mike, I feel like you were more supportive than most. We're like, oh, so you gave away your print and got some garbage in return. And I was like, I already gave the print away before he told me all of this. He could have walked away. It's not like he tricked me into giving him a free print. But finally, I've been validated and vindicated. I don't know if both of those words are correct. I don't know. I'm not a dictionary. And it feels good because you can see it in the main treasure room. You can see like a big pile of those little shards with the cool backlighting, and then there's this like weird torch looking treasure thing laying on top of them, and I'm just like, finally, everybody shut up. So
Yeah.
it's just nice. It's nice I got that moment.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's treasure. That's real treasure.
It's
That's
treasure
real
to
treasure.
me. It's treasure to
Yeah.
me,
Um yeah, so I in my collection, actually I don't presently know where they are. Somewhere in my collection, somewhere in my house. Maybe not in my house, maybe in the storage unit, maybe at Crystal's parents. I packed away. I have um screen used from an episode of Smallville. There's an episode where there's like a model of Smallville, and I it's like there's a windmill and the water tower,
Mm.
and the water tower has the Smallville, like the town sign thing painted on it. It's the
That's pretty
same water
rad.
tower that in the opening of every episode the meteor smashes through the water tower,
Oh,
right? Like
cool.
from the
Okay,
first
yeah.
episode. And it's a little model. There's a point where I think it's like Lois or something is like is in a like the Smallville museum or something like that, and somebody's giving her exposition. It turns out that that person's the bad guy, right? It's every episode of Smallville. Giving a monologue or whatever, and looking at this stuff, and it's like, oh, this is what Smallville looked like before everything happened, sort of thing. And so I have that little model of the water tower and the windmill. And to most people, they look at it and like it's like when you look at them, they are not exciting to look at. Like
Yeah. Who cares?
they don't even look particularly well constructed because they're on screen for all of like 10 seconds and they're
Mm.
like in the bottom right corner of the screen. Like there's no close up on it. Like
Yeah. No.
it's a prop that just needed to be there. But it was in that episode. It was in an episode of Smallville, and I'm a Superman fan and I love Smallville, and Erica Durance was in the same room as those pieces of whatever plastic and balsa wood and whatever, and she looked at them, and she's Lois Lane, and she's my favorite Lois Lane. So yeah, it's like I'm like, yeah, these are priceless to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, for you it's like yeah, somebody gave you a little piece of rock, glass, resin, whatever, and nobody else cares. Everybody else is gonna be like, yeah, so they gave you they tricked you into taking this magic bean.
Tina
But you're
is
like,
Tina's driving me crazy on purpose. She's like
eh,
busting my chops on purpose. Oh, you got garbage. Like
yeah,
she's I'm sure she thinks it's cooler than she's letting me believe.
yeah. But yeah, to me, it's like, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, especially to get it before Skeleton Crew
Mhm.
even comes out, right? It's like, oh, I got a thing before anybody even knows how cool this is going to
Yeah.
be. And then you hope that the show is going to be good.
Oh, I can't
So
tell you how many times I've said to Tina, "Watch this scene is gonna get cut from the show or something."
yeah. Nope. There were little
It was there.
thingies on the screen
It
at
was
some point.
there.
Yeah, you did it. You did it. Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
Um, okay, let's talk really quickly about one last thing, and then we're gonna wrap it up. And that uh, is Wim force sensitive? I want to know from
Mm.
you. I'm asking you the question this time, Joe.
I I don't think he's force sensitive. I think he wants more than anything to be force sensitive. I don't think he is.
Mhm.
Um I kind of think Neil's gonna end up being force sensitive because Neil was the one who's like, "What? You just want to be a Jedi?" Like
Mhm.
Neil's the one who is like the least likely to be force sensitive, which makes me feel like he's gonna be force sensitive. No, I don't. I feel like the lesson here is gonna be like you don't have to be a Jedi to be a hero. Wim.
Yeah, you think
That's where
that's
I'm
what it's gonna
leaning.
be?
Are you thinking he's
Okay.
force sensitive?
Yeah, I think so.
What's pushing
Yeah.
you in that direction?
Um, I mean, I think just the general the connection between Jod and Wim. There seems to be everybody else has a very antagonistic relationship with Jod.
Mm-hmm.
But Wim and Jod seem to me to be kind of kindred spirits in a way. Jod is fighting against it really, really hard.
Mm.
Really, really hard. But I think that there's an element there of like he is absolutely seeing himself in this kid, and the things that he went through and the trauma that he went through. So he's denying a lot of it and kind of fighting um, with that internal thing that's going on.
Mm.
Uh, and that to me kind of indicates it. Also, like the lightsaber moment, as much as it's a gag, as much as it was like sort of a silly thing, I do think that it has a I think that there's a deeper implication behind it.
Okay.
I do think that it's gonna come back. There's a component with Wim of him uh acting without thinking a lot of the time, and it's been played as a bit of a gag thing of the like especially it's like the don't push that button, like that's the ship's auto destruct sequence or whatever it is. And it's like, I really wish you wouldn't have told him that. Right, it's like, because it's like this thing of like everybody else is looking at it and going like, oh, he's always doing the thing that gets us into the most trouble. This episode ends with they're kind of screwed, right? Like it's like, oh, take them prisoner and we're gonna whatever. um and then Wim, on a whim. Well, that's why his name is Wim. Uh, he hits the chair, right? He hits the stool,
Mm.
and they plummet into a pit. Now, you know, it's not a Scooby Doo cartoon. There are some rules. There's a reality here that we're following. Seems like a bad idea. It seems like there would be spikes at the bottom of that pit in
Yeah.
particular, right? I or acid or something, lava, who knows. But I think that all of those things that Wim has done have been him. It's not so. Crystal and I, when we're watching, often are like, "Oh, he's ADHD." Like he is the most ADHD Star Wars character. Because he's a kid. We're attributing that, but I think that if you stop and you think about it and you go like, why does he feel pulled in this other direction that nobody else does? Right? Same as Luke, same as Anakin, right? There's something else out there. There's adventure out in the galaxy. And for Luke, it's like Luke is being pulled in that direction because he has a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Force knows what his purpose is. He like Rey as well, right? Um, these characters are pulled towards their destiny. They're pulled towards their fate, and what we see with those other characters usually is an early reluctance, right? The refusal of the call, part of the hero's journey. Wim has been presented to us in the opposite sort of like procession through his story, right? He starts off initially like, and he says it in this episode. It's in this episode. Like all I ever wanted was to go on a real adventure. And Jod is like, well, listen, we're going to Captain Renaud's pirate lair. It's pretty good. This is pretty, as far as adventures go, this one's pretty up there. Like, and then he's like, he has his refusal of the call in this episode where he's like, but I can't, but like it's everything is so scary and confusing, and I just miss my mom and dad. Like I just want to go home, and that's the opposite of the hero's journey, right? Like usually it's the like, oh, like you're home already and you don't want to leave, right?
Yeah.
You're reluctant to leave, and it's like he's gone on the adventure, he's on the adventure, and he's like, I take it back, I just want to go home. But the reason he pushed the button and the ship took off, the reason that he took the shortcut, right? Like he ends up in front of the ship in the first place. I he makes all of these decisions, and in the moment I think they seem like they're impulsive bad decisions, but I think in the larger picture it's going to turn out that without him none of this happens, and
Mm.
without whatever this is leading towards, it's like it's going to be the key to something larger is going to come out of this, that is important to the fate of the galaxy at large, and that's what he's been feeling, right? When he's asked the question of like what do you want to be, and everybody else is like, I want to be a data processor, I want to be an analyst, I want to be an ad, like they're all fighting over this boring shit that nobody wants to actually do, and that's our first hint that like something is very off
Yeah.
in this world, right? And he's like, I want to protect people, like I want to defend people who can't defend themselves. Like there's something he is compelled in a way that nobody else in this world that he's from is like there's, and I think that that voice that is telling him push the green button, right, is not it. Like I might be projecting a little bit of myself onto it. Crystal's like screaming at the her iPhone right now as she's listening to this.
I don't hear it. Oh, as she's listening, I was like, I don't hear anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's listening. Yeah, like I most certainly I am relating to this character. I am relating to the ADHD thing and everybody yelling at him all the time and why can't you just be normal sort of thing,
Mm.
and all of that. there's a thing that happens when you're an adult that gets diagnosed with ADHD, where you do an inventory on your life and you go back through all of these, major events and things that happened and decisions that you made and regrets that you have and all of that stuff, and you start going like, oh, so that one was the ADHD, that one was the ADHD, that one was the ADHD, and you start to go like, okay, so it's not that I had a a problem. It's not that I was a bad kid. It's that there was something else outside of, not outside of me, because it's not outside of, right? Obviously it's in my brain chemistry, but there's this sort of like this element that you're not in control of that is influencing your decisions.
Mm.
And I think that that's being used here. I think that John Watts is using that as an analogy for the Force, and that to someone who is untrained, it would feel like, it would appear to other people like impulsive behavior. But for Wim, it's, he doesn't have a choice.
Mm.
Right? Like in these moments when he does these things, he doesn't have a choice. The problem that he's got right now is that everybody's been telling him his whole life,
Mm.
don't listen to that voice. Right? But Jod is the first person who's kind of coming along and going like, and he hasn't quite done it yet. He hasn't gotten there yet, but this is where I see that there's like a master Padawan relationship here. Is that like he's getting very close. The advice of like your focus determines your reality, and the stuff about attachments. It's like he's getting to the point of mentoring this kid. Their relationship is different from everybody else's relationship with Jod, right? Um, and what Wim needs to learn is to not fight that voice. If he wasn't fighting the voice and he was fully embracing it and giving himself over to it, right? Like it's the conversation that Luke and Obi-Wan have on the Falcon of like, so it controls your actions, or right? And it's like, but it also obeys your commands, right? Like the Force is not one thing or the other, right? Like if you can quiet your mind and listen to it, the path becomes clear, right?
Mm.
And so Wim is stuck in this thing of like, the Force is telling him, pick up the lightsaber, you can save everybody, right? This is what you were made for. Defend those who can't defend themselves. You can do it. You see the lightsaber, it's there. Grab the lightsaber, do it. But because Wim's internal monologue is going like, you can't do this, you can't, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea, you should just go home, you just want to go home, he grabs the lightsaber and he doesn't hold it the right way, because he's not trusting his instincts, right? He needs to like ignore what he's seeing. His eyes are deceiving him, right? Not in a literal sense, he doesn't need a blast shield, but the point of that is not it, the blast shield being down, your eyes can deceive you. The point is not actually like literally visually what you're seeing is not um real, right? Like that's not what Obi-Wan is telling Luke in that moment. What Obi-Wan is telling Luke is everything that you think you know, everything that you've been taught, all of these things that have been programmed into you by the world are going to stop you from hearing the will of the Force, right? That's reinforced in Ahsoka with Sabine's lessons, right? Because Sabine's own inner doubt is what's stopping her from being able to tap into the Force. And because, and it's harder for her for a variety of reasons, but also like these two stories happening concurrently is also important, because I think that there's a very big piece of Dave Filoni's Star Wars that is trying to undo the idea of predestiny and midichlorians, and the ability to use the Force is a, is a, it's a checkbox during character creation, right? It's been turned into a video game mechanic, and that's not what it was, right? Like midichlorians were a plot point for the Phantom Menace. George never intended for them to be an absolute, right? As he would say in the third movie, it's like, stop thinking that way. Stop thinking in terms of binary, yes or no, black or white, good or bad, right? Like start thinking about you know these individual scenarios and the purpose of things and that sort of stuff. So it's like the idea that anyone can be a Jedi with enough training. It's just easier for some people. There's the Rise of Skywalker comic. Or sorry, not Rise of Skywalker. The Rise of Kylo Ren comic book that has a great moment with Luke where he's explaining to one of his Padawans, because they're like, "Oh, I can't do this like Ben can. Like he's so much stronger in the Force." And Luke is like, "It's not how it works. It's not a power, right? Like the Force, it's like the ability to communicate with the Force is like a door, and for some people the doors just open more already. Like they're starting at a point where they have more access than you do, but anybody can open the door. Anybody can open the door, right? And it just takes time, it takes practice, it takes discipline, it takes all of these things. But everything that is alive is connected to the Force, so anyone can use the Force, right? And that's where, like, I always go back into Han uses the Force when Han makes bad decisions, right? But those bad decisions end up working out for everybody, right? Is like, yeah, like you're not actually flying into an asteroid field, right? All of that. So like that's Han going like he's just listening to he would say his gut, right? But it's like, but that's not your gut, that's the Force. You're connected to the Force. When Poe Dameron flies inside Starkiller Base, inside the oscillator, there is no explanation for him being able to do what he does in that moment other than the fact that that dude is tapped into the Force, right? He's just not a Jedi. There's a difference between using the Force, being connected to the Force, and being a Jedi, right? But like many of the characters in Star Wars, I feel like they use the Force. They just like it's like you see it in Poe's face. He quiets his mind. The eyes narrow, his grip on the yoke tightens, and he's like, I'm gonna do this. Closes up the S foils and he flies inside the thing, and then he blows it up from the inside and flies back out. Like it's an uncanny feat. Like there's no way that anybody could do that if they were not somehow super powered, right? And so to me it's like the force sensitive thing is an easy way to talk about it, but to me it's more about what's Wim's purpose in the story. And because the story and the Force are the same thing, right? When we say that like in the in a Star Wars movie or in a book or in a video game or whatever, that like, oh, the Force is telling them to do this, it's like it's it's their purpose within the story, it's their purpose within the narrative, which is their purpose within the galaxy, right? Like these are one and the same. So narratively speaking, like why does Wim exist in this story, right? Like what? Because all of these kids have a purpose, right? Like all of them, they all fit into it. Wim is it's really hard to see what it is, because it seems like at the moment all he's done is get them into more trouble, right? But the adventure doesn't happen without him. Like he is the inciting incident, right? And I to me it's like that is from a if we're looking at Star Wars with a theological lens and Star Wars stories as scripture, by which I don't mean that it's religious and that it's sacrosanct in some way, or you know I'm not saying to take it that seriously. What I'm saying is that when we look at, especially in Christianity and Judaism, and to my understanding, but I won't necessarily assert this because I don't have a full understanding, but I believe that Islam works very similarly. the stories that we tell within those traditions are lessons to be learned, right? Good Star Wars follows that same tenet. The good stories within Star Wars are not just, oh, that was a cool explosion, right? Oh, droids are neat, aliens are weird, this is fun. That stuff's all window dressing to get us to the actual purpose of these stories, right? This battle between good and evil, what it means to be a friend, love conquers all of these things, right? All the stuff that George has talked about a million times. And so when I look at it with that sort of a lens, and I'm trying to like uh pull it apart like theologically within the religion of Star Wars, and I'm looking at it and going like, what's the point of this story? What's the point of these characters? What's the purpose of this character? That's where I inevitably come back to Wim is force sensitive. He's force sensitive in the sense that of all of the characters that we've been introduced to in this story, there are two that have a deep connection to the force. One is Jod and the other is Wim. And the two of them are connected to each other somehow. And it's unclear right now because we don't have the whole story. But I do think that by the time that we finish, by the time that we're done, that it's actually going to be much more clear. And yeah, it's the thing that trips me up with these stories right now. It's the same with the Jedi, the Cal Kestis stuff. Is that like we've got an from this point in the story that Skeleton Crew is in, we've got like a 20-ish year gap, 20 something year gap, until we get to The Force Awakens, and a bunch of stuff happens in there, and we don't really know what, but there are no Jedi in the galaxy at that point in the story. There are fewer Jedi in the galaxy as far as we know right now, based on the information that we have on hand. Confirmed Jedi in the galaxy in the sequel era than there were in the original trilogy era, right? Even if we just go based on movie canon, there's one Jedi. There's one left in the sequel trilogy. It's just Luke. In the original trilogy, there's at least two. Right? And now we know that as we often say on this podcast, the galaxy's lousy with these Padawans, right? Ahsoka and Cal and Kanan and you know, like the list goes on and on and on. Quinlan's out there somewhere, right?
Yeah, my
Asajj is
man.
out there somewhere. Like the galaxy is full of these Force users. Ezra, Sabine, right? Like it's more than a couple. It's more than two or three. But in the sequel era, the galaxy has lost all of that. Like it's not like the First Order is sort of like running roughshod over the galaxy. How, like why? How could that be? Yes, Luke runs away. Luke disappears. His temple is destroyed. Were all of these disparate characters there? As far as we know, they weren't, right? Like as far as we know, like Rise of Kylo Ren shows us what the temple was like. It doesn't show us everything. It doesn't give us the whole picture. And obviously, you know, they can retcon and add more to it and whatever. But the thing that I find interesting, the thing that I am curious about, the thing that I want to know more about is where is Ezra? Where is Cal? Where is Sabine? Where's Ahsoka? And now I'm at the point where it's like I'm gonna be asking the question: where's Jod? What
Yeah.
happened to Jod? What happened to Wim? Because I do think that Wim is he's taken his first steps into a larger world, right? Like he's started down that path, and I think him picking up the lightsaber, I think that there's a significance to that. It was not simply, oh my god, that's a lightsaber. I think Jedi are cool. Something pulled him over in that direction. He's the only one who saw it. Nobody else noticed the lightsaber, right? Yeah, and then that final moment of Jod picking up the lightsaber and igniting it just as the screen goes black, right? Like that there's something there where yeah, there's something there. It just it's fuzzy at the moment. It's fuzzy at the moment. It's obfuscated by everything else that we have in the story. But I really do feel at this point that Wim's oh god, I can't believe that it took me this long to figure out why his name is Wim. Wim's specific gift for the Force is intuition. Right? Like, because every Jedi kind of has. I shouldn't say that. Not every Jedi. Like, some of them are just boring, plain vanilla Jedi. But the Jedi that in the post Disney era, that have been significant, they've all, if you sort of like carry it through, they all have like a specific skill, and I think a lot of that comes out of the legend stuff, out of specifically Coran Horn as a character, because like that character established that not everybody has the same skill set when it comes to the Force, right? And there were several skills that he was never able to master, certain things he was never able to do. And I think that man, so that's another character that's out there. Coran Horn is out there. Yes, Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's part of that story. Yeah, I hope, I pray, I am kneeling at the altar of the cowboy hatted one, and I'm offering up my my prayers to Chopper that that these characters are going to show up in the next trilogy, in the Rey movie.
Yeah, I would love that.
That's what we're building towards, is that like Cal Kestis is still out there, that he's on the other side of the galaxy, right? That's, I mean, spoilers for the second game, but it's been a while. But that they're, they've built something. I can't remember the name of the planet, but and that the path, like, that's where they all went. That's what happened. Is that like Quinlan, Coran, all these characters, and that possibly somehow what's going on with Ahsoka and Sabine being in another galaxy altogether is going to potentially link up to that stuff at some point as well, and that's where those characters have been, and that at some point in the intervening years between Rise of Skywalker and the Rey movie, or this new trilogy, whatever it ends up being, we've only got a few more months before we're going to find out at Star Wars Celebration. I guarantee it. We'll get an explanation of where these characters have been, but some of them may be back, and already in the story, that it may have already progressed, and that whatever animated thing they're holding back on us with, whatever this project is that they're working away at Lucasfilm Animation that nobody's talking about, that it's connected into this stuff as well. And that, yeah, hopefully we hear about that at Celebration too. But I don't know. I don't know. And Wim is a character that is perfectly geared to be part of that next wave, part of that. Because how great would that be to establish that character in Skeleton Crew? Everybody loves the show. We all have a great time with Skeleton Crew, and then you jump forward to post Rise of Skywalker, and it's like, yeah, he's there. He's part of Rey's Jedi Order. That'd be rad, right? Like, I don't know. I think that would be so rewarding for people who are watching these shows. And it's. I mean, guys, listen, anybody at Lucasfilm, if you guys are listening, this is what we want. This is what we actually are asking for. These are the things that we want to see happen that have not been happening, that have been, I think, one of the bigger sources of frustration for a lot of fans with this era of Star Wars, is this, like, and We're gonna do it like we're gonna have an episode after Skeleton Crew when we get back to like sort of our topical episodes. We're gonna do an episode where we like run down all of the loose threads since Force Awakens because there are so many, and the one that I always go to is the easiest one to go to is like, how did Luke's lightsaber end up with Maz? It's a
I'm gonna be
story for
real with
another
you.
time.
I don't care anymore.
No,
It's been so
I
long.
don't
I don't care.
I don't care either, but like the point of it being that it's emblematic of this problem that the Disney era of Star Wars has had, right? It's the most emblematic because she literally says that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
And then they have not told the story, right? So how many of these other stories for another time? That'll be the name of the episode, is like a story for another time. It like how many of these stories are just out there and like they've established something, they've given us a piece, they've said we're going to come back to this, and then they've just ignored it, right? Like because I think that there are at least a dozen that we'll be able to get into in an episode. I have to do like an inventory of it.
Most of them were were asked at the end of the Bad Batch.
Oh yeah, a great many of them.
12 of them.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think that's it for this episode. That's everything that I wanted to talk about.
How many
You
left
got
do we
anything
have?
left?
How many episodes are left?
This was the 5th one, so we got 3 left. We got 3 weeks left.
And one of them's tomorrow.
Yeah, one's tomorrow.
Man,
Yeah. We're just into like the first couple of weeks of January, and then we're done.
Man, this show came and went.
Yeah, but it's been fantastic.
Oh, I love it.
It's been a great ride. Yeah, that's where I'm like, how much like. I don't know how much we'll get connected into Mando and Thrawn in this specifically because we just really don't have that much time.
Yeah.
But I just think that whatever happens at the end,
Yeah.
most likely that At-Aten will be sort of like revealed to the galaxy.
Yeah.
It'll kind of put a target on At-Aten, and then it'll be a bit of like a race for like who can, you know, who's going to get possession of At-Aten? Will it be the pirates? Will it be the First Order / the Imperial Remnant, or will it be the New Republic? And I'm kind of leaning towards that it's going to end up in the hands of the First Order eventually.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I don't know. Maybe we'll be setting up a second season. Maybe there's more story to tell, but. I don't know. We got 3 left. We'll see how much they cover in the next one. The greatest thing about this show is that as much as we can speculate about sort of like these larger things that we think are going to happen, I have no idea what's going to happen in the next episode. Right? We're going to start. It's they're going to fall out of a pit into some water and then have to like swim to something, and then Fern's gonna yell at Wim, and Wim's gonna be like, well, I saved us, didn't I? And they're gonna have an argument, and then Neil's gonna be like, we need to stop fighting, we got to get back to the ship, and then they're gonna do that. And there's gonna be pirates. They have to avoid pirates. But what's Jod doing? I don't know. I'm a little bit worried for Brutus. I'll say that. I'm worried for Brutus.
I feel like he's not gonna.
Jod has a lightsaber, and the only other Shistavanin that we've seen on screen. No, I shouldn't. That's not right. That's Ponda Baba's arm. It's just Ponda Baba's arm looks like a werewolf arm. I was thinking like he's gonna get cut up by a lightsaber. Yeah, I think Brutus is gonna meet an untimely end at the end of a lightsaber, and that the Onyx Cinder is gonna be the flagship of this pirate fleet again, and that all of these pirates are gonna be heading to At-Aten, and then the kids are gonna have to stow away on another ship, and yeah, that's my guess for the next episode.
Yeah,
we'll see. See how right I am.
Yeah.
I love it. It's tomorrow night. We're not recording this close to the next episode.
Do you really think Brutus is going to be dead in the next episode, and then like Jod will be the villain for the remaining 2 episodes until he's not?
Yeah, okay. I do. Yeah, I think I don't know if he'll be killed, but I think that as has been the tradition in Disney Star Wars, he's gonna get a lightsaber through the gut, and we're gonna assume that he's dead.
Mm.
But then
And
maybe he'll
then
come
he'll
back.
come back, and then he'll be part of Jod's like official coming back kind of thing to save the kids.
Yeah, I don't know, because we gotta get to a point. We gotta get to a point where that where the canon that we saw uh in last week's episode comes back.
Yeah, that's true. That's
And we've been thinking that like
yeah,
that's gonna be like that Neil is gonna be like, oh, I know how we can stop the pirates.
yeah,
I know how
yeah,
we can fight the pirates,
yeah.
right? So yeah, and I don't know if that'll be fighting Jod or if it'll be fighting. I I I think, actually, okay. So here's what I think is gonna happen in the next episode, and then we're done. I think that because we haven't talked about him at all, and he's one of the best parts of this episode. It's Cathalops,
Yeah.
who is a Cthulhu. He's a
Yeah.
Cthulhu
Yeah.
with mutton chops,
He
but
was
he's got
great.
a mustache. But it's Cathalops, this giant monster. Cathalops seems like an important dude to me. He seems like he's connected. He seems like I mean, like he's alone in the bottom part of the baths, expecting attendants to bring him things, and I think Cathalops has his own ship, and I think that they're gonna hook back up with Cathalops, and
Oh
and
man,
and
awesome.
Cathalops is gonna help them get home. I I I and possibly Kim might be part of that as well. Um, that they're gonna have to. Well, I think maybe while Jod is sort of like trying to take over the pirates again,
Mm.
that they're gonna do this, and they're gonna somehow manage to beat Jod back. Or they get there and it's like the pirates are kind of like occupying the city, and it's like, how are we gonna stop them? And Neil's gonna be like, it's like, oh, we need to take out their ships. And it's like, well, I don't know how we're gonna do that without a gun. And Neil will be like, I know where there's a big gun. And yeah, and we'll get that. But yeah, I think Cathalops is gonna help them, because that's an ally that they made
Yeah. Yeah.
that's gonna come back.
Oh, I love it. I love
What a
that.
great
I
character!
hope so.
What a
Yeah,
great
he's
that
awesome.
such an indicator of how much John Watts really gets Star Wars.
Mm.
Really gets Star Wars, because it's like, oh, there's a monster, and then when we come back, the monster's not a monster. He's just a dude. He's just a dude. It's just,
He's not just a dude, he's a bro.
yeah, he's a bro. Absolutely, yeah. Like, yeah, he's like, man, I'm gonna help you, and you know why? Because I gotta hear the rest of that story, man. I gotta hear the rest of that story. You could tell it to me on the way back to Adat, and get in my ship. Let's go. Yeah. And it's weird, and it's silly, and it's dumb, and it's awesome, and that's why I love Star Wars, man. That's why
Yep.
I love Star Wars. I mean, I believe that I posted on Blue Sky at that moment when we saw Cathalops, like when he kind of comes forward and starts talking. I posted, I fucking love Star Wars. I fucking love Star Wars, because that's it. That's what it is. Like that piece of Star Wars is why I love it so much. Because when you think, oh, the octopus monster, it's a Dianoga, we've been down this road before. No, stop. Like, it's yeah, I think that's it's like a Tolkienism that George Lucas adopted. It's very much like a Lord of the Rings
Mm.
type of thing, of like, man, these, like, you're like, I looks can be deceiving, right? And it's like,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, heroes come in all shapes and sizes. It's a good lesson. I think it's a very good lesson for kids to learn, for sure. Awesome. Skeleton Crew is great. I'm having so much fun with this show. I can't wait for the next episode. I can't wait to talk about it, and hang out with everybody that's listening to the podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm gonna give you all the heads up. Go to patreon.com/ThunderQuack and join as a free subscriber, because in January I'm gonna give away 10 year-long annual subscriptions to our Patreon, just for free subscribers on Patreon. So if you go and you subscribe for free on Patreon, you'll just get notifications on Patreon when episodes post, basically, because everything that I post early eventually becomes free. There's very little on the Patreon these days that is actually like exclusive other than off the record. So yeah, everything eventually kind of goes out to everybody. So that's one of the great things about being a member over there of the free one. Also, because it is going to be our 10th anniversary of ThunderQuack in January, there will be some exclusive stuff for free subscribers as well. So yeah, go join up over there, patreon.com/ThunderQuack, and hang out there. It's the best way to stay up to date with everything ThunderQuack is through that, is through the Patreon. So yeah, bunch of stuff planned in January, and good gravy, it's like a week away, isn't it? Oh my god.
Sure is.
I look forward to it though.
Yeah,
January 5th is the 10th
great.
anniversary. And yeah, we're gonna have a special episode of Perfect 10 that's going up, and a special episode of Off the Record that I need to edit and put out with Crystal and Joe, that
I'm very
everybody should look
excited.
forward to.
I'm very excited
Yeah.
for that one to release. We had a lot of fun.
I haven't even listened to it yet.
Oh, really? It's
yeah,
fun,
I've
man.
got it
It's a good
downloaded
time.
and I haven't edited it, so I have to edit it
Cool.
and listen to it. But
It was a good time.
yeah, so lots of really cool stuff coming, and once we get out of Skeleton Crew, we'll be back to doing regular episodes of Off the Record as well. So it'll be like every other week sort of thing. But patreon.com/ThunderQuack, that's the best way to do it. And then also come hang out with us on Discord. Go to thunderquack.com/Discord. It'll take you to the invite, and you can join up with our Discord server and hang out there. We got a couple of new members recently, and
Nice.
it's an awesome community. And yeah, it's very small, but that means that it's actually, decent people. And it's not like a lot of the Discord servers that I'm a part of that have like thousands of people. It's like you can't keep up.
Yeah.
You can't keep up with it. You just have to be sitting on Discord all day in order to know what the hell's going on. But ours is not like that. It is mostly just us sharing memes. Mostly, and then talking about trailers for things, and then discussing podcast episodes. So it's a really, really great community, especially if you're a listener. Yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for hanging out, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Guys, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Michael.
Sure. Happy New Year.
Sure. Yeah. Totally.
Okay. Okay. See you guys. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV. And join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/ThunderQuack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network.